Hello, good evening, and welcome. I am Samuel Trapp, and this is International Flavor. We are coming to you with a recording today. I'm doing a recording of this show because I have a conflict in scheduling, and so I am doing a recording. It's actually happens to be late at night on Monday the 9th. I have an interview planned. It's a introduction. We're streaming live right now on a video stream as well. And I'm going to do that with my brother. I have a channel called International Flavor. It live streams this radio program is also called International Flavor, but I live stream also on International Flavor in Russian. And I'm starting to live stream in International Flavor in English. And I'm trying to come up with a good time to do this. And this is my introductory effort at streaming on live stream. I'm only posting it as a test. I have a third channel called All Things Trapp, as I may have mentioned several times in the interviews, radio programs, live streams before. I have an extremely large family. My mother and father had 12 children. And this All Things Trapp, there's plenty of us with many different backgrounds and expertise efforts on our side. And it's, if nothing else, I have a very, very interesting family. I've just got David, my brother, has been on the show previously with me, and we are going to discuss a few things internationally. He has traveled internationally, was a United States Marine, played, or not played, I'm sorry, worked in the areas of soccer with international students and international sports academies and things of that nature, and I'll let him talk about that. And we're going to talk a little bit about international events. We're going to introduce the channel All Things Trapp and try to get all of our other brothers and sisters that are still living to participate and bring in some of their expertise and some of their grandchildren. My mother, I don't know the exact number. I have to get it updated from her. I couldn't tell you. But I want to say she told me the last time I saw her, she had 70 something grandkids and 90 something great grandkids, but I don't know those numbers. Sending birthday cards is definitely a project. She sends out a good number every month. How she keeps track of it, I'll never know, but most of the time she hits them all. This is the effort. I'm going to bring in my brother, and we are just going to talk about the Trapp family history, and I'm going to bring him on so that he can join in the stage. And I shall add him, and perhaps you see him now. That is my brother, David Trapp. David, how about you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
I can do that. But I do have to answer one question for you. Because I do know the exact amount of grandchildren and great grandchildren that Mom has. She has six,
well, you may have to move closer to your microphone. I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you before. I just hope it's loud enough for everybody to hear it.
Well, okay. I was going to say, Mom has 63 grandchildren, and she has 63. 92 great grandchildren. Now, that's in flux, but most of the grandchildren have already been born. And I can use my specific case. My wife passed on, you know this, Sam, she passed on like 13 years ago, but I am getting married again, and my fiance is in Brazil, and she has 4 children. Now, 2 of them are her grandchildren, but she's taken over raising them. So, I asked Mom the other day when I last talked to her, do they count And she said, of course they do, because they're going to be traps. So now her grandchildren have gone up by 4 more. And every time I talk to her, every time you talk to her, she's adding more because we like children,
Well,
and there's so many.
and the numbers keep changing.
Oh, yeah.
We put this on for people to view. Currently, we're streaming on Facebook on my channel, Facebook on whatever channel you have, and on All Things Trapp, the link. And I've set the link out there in the comments that if you're watching on StreamYard, you can see the comments, and I'm going to add them below, in fact. So if you are watching, you can see them. But I can put a banner below us and add the stream tag so that people can join us in that event. So I don't know if you see it now, but you can see on the live stream, you can see the link going down below. And if you're watching and you'd like to join us, I can really put up to 10 people on this screen. Now, we're testing this out, so I don't want it to go crazy on you, but David, we had to make sure your camera was set up correctly and everything was okay. I hope that the sound comes out okay, and your internet connection is good and things of that nature, because otherwise it can be a little spotty on the live recording and on the video side. And but I've had the highest number I've had as far as people viewing. I'm sorry, not viewing, people participating on the screen. I've only had 3, me and 2 guests. And so it'd be really fun to try to add some more. That would be entertaining. But the link is below. It allows you to see the to interact with us on a live stream, and I kind of like that, and I do like the format. And I plan to pick a time for this. What I'm trying to do is get it on International Flavor, where I can both live stream video and audio, like radio and video at the exact same time. So far, I've had a little trouble doing that, but we're working on that technological problem even now. And so I've invited David along to speak about this. Now, David has participated in my show before. I normally talk about international events and international affairs, which I already did today, and I hope that was interesting for you. Our shows are recorded on the audio side too, and I'm going to try to upload them to my podcast account too. But I need to do a little rebuilding on that. So if you're used to listening to things just by audio and not by video, but my point to bring David along for the show, and what we had talked about doing, was kind of giving the world and our own family and the All Things Trapp channel and the International Flavor channel, if people are interested. We have a family, like I said, of 12, and I'm going to do this, and we'll discuss it. But the oldest of our brothers passed away, and his name was Clifford Michael, just like my father, and he was Clifford Michael Trapp the third, and he passed away. Was that 5 years ago, David?
Yeah, maybe even
I think
less
it was,
than
and I think it was 5 years ago, and he was the first.
Wow.
Well, we had a brother who was the 4th child born, and he passed away shortly after his birth, and so that there's only 10 of us living right now. In fact, all of my life, the most that there were was 11, because the 4th child died before I was born. I'm the seventh child, and but our oldest brother, Clifford Michael Trapp the third, he spoke fluent, very good German, and he had children that speak many languages too. There's a Russian in there. I think is one of his sons spent some time in Moscow, uh, lived over there, if I recall correctly, and that several of his kids speak other languages. David, who is with us today, is my second brother, now the oldest surviving living child. My brother Clayton is the third. He's living in Nevada right now, isn't that right, David?
I believe so. He was talking
Yeah,
to
and
me a
David's here
while
in
back
Florida
about
too.
going to Colorado.
Yeah, I think well, he gets around. He does get around, and a lot of us are mobile. David and I have ended up in Florida on different sides of the state. My fourth brother, as I stated, his name was Joseph, and he passed away at birth. He would have been, well, what would he be? It doesn't
60,
matter. Ages aren't
60.
relevant. I suppose I'm not going to go that far in. And after that, the first girl was born. Her name's Virginia, and she lives in Idaho. And very interesting. She's always got something exciting to say. She's traveled quite a bit internationally as well. And then after that, there's my brother Russell, and he has been around a little bit too, mostly in the United States. Lived a long time in Indiana, and then there's me. I've been all over the place from Missouri, and now I'm in Florida. As I've repeated quite a few times, I've been to all 50 states and 51 countries. So I'm working on knocking out countries. I like that. Then comes after me another girl. Her name is Vicky, and she lives in Illinois. Then come uh, my two twin brothers, and they both live in Chicago. And then after them, there's my uh, sister Susan, and she lives in Utah. And the very last one, her name is Callista, and she's in Utah too, isn't she, David? Yeah,
I think she's in Idaho.
She went to Idaho. She was in
Yeah.
Utah, is
Yeah, she
the
went
last
up
I
to
recall,
Idaho.
but I can't keep track. But good for her. She's got 7 kids. I think she's got the
Something
most
like that.
kids of us all, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She's got 7, and she's a very entertaining person. I will say that she's a lot of fun. Now, she was 23 years younger than my oldest brother, if I recall. 23 years younger than him. Now, I was by the time, wow, she was just barely able to talk when I was leaving home. When I was gone, she was born, but I can tell you how many years are between us. I, I have no idea, but it's at least, I think it's around 15, but I don't know. And there's so many of us, it's hard to keep track, and we all have so many children in our own lives that makes it a little difficult to keep track anyway. And but my mother does a really good job of it. Now my father, he passed away. Goodness, David, well, 17 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a good long time ago. 2000, and I had a car accident that was in '06, and I
He
believe
was
it was
still
the
alive.
following spring. It was the
Yeah.
following spring that he passed away, if I recall.
Hmm.
And it might have been a year and a half, but I think it was a year
So
and a half
almost
after.
18 years ago.
Yeah, it's a while.
Wow. Yeah.
And mom is what, 84? Yeah, mom's
So
84, and dad would have been 86, and he passed
yeah.
away at 69, and his birthday's in January, so he would have just been turning 80, 87 in January, and uh, that means it definitely was almost 18 years ago, yeah, that he passed away.
Yeah.
So a very large family, a lot of talent in our family. I would say we have people who get around, people that do quite a few things, and all of us are pretty independent. Not saying that we aren't the greatest at communicating with each other, which is sometimes unfortunate. And one of the reasons for me to create this channel, we all get busy in our own lives, and I know for smaller families that definitely takes place. But for larger families, for us, I can't keep track. There's no way I keep track. I barely keep track of my own life, let alone all the other grandchildren. It's just kind of a bother to me that I don't. Wish I did a little bit better job of it because I would like to know. I'm curious. I hope that some of the people out there join in on our channel. Um, and I wanted to discuss that. But I brought David on to go over some of the things that happen in our family. David is a very gifted and talented person. I remember a number of years ago when do you remember going on that cruise together so many years ago, David?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember
Yeah.
that? Your
Yeah.
wife was
It
still
was fun.
alive at that time, and she was pretty
Yep.
healthy, and we had a great time. One of your clients, didn't that guy win the lottery or something?
Yeah. He was already well off when I got introduced to him, and then they won the lottery down in West Virginia, and he was the funniest guy. Him and his wife, they were hilarious.
They were pretty
And
funny. I remember that trip was just hilarious, and
oh yeah, he was
yeah,
a good
and
guy.
and that was you and your wife, him and his wife, and me and my ex-wife, and
Right.
boy, we had quite the time on that trip. That was a lot of fun, and
That was interesting.
and that was you weren't you selling?
I was
You were doing
managing.
financial consulting or something. What were you doing? Tell me your history.
I was a portfolio manager, managing
Mm-hmm.
stock and bond portfolios for wealthy individuals. And when
Mm-hmm.
they won the lottery, they didn't know what to do with it. And so one of their cohorts, one of their neighbors who I managed for, uh, gave them my name. And do you have time for a quick story about them?
Sure, you go right ahead.
Okay, so first time I met him, I traveled
Now, no
from
names. We don't want to do any of that without permission or
nah,
anything. But
the first time I met him, I traveled from Columbus, and back then I wore the 3-piece suit and tie, and the shiny black shoes, and I was all decked out, and I went down to see them, and he was driving this beat up pickup truck, and he said, "I want to show you this piece of property that we bought to build our dream house on." And he and his wife, um, they were they were heftier people, so I'm stuck in the middle, and in this pickup truck, and he takes me out and it'd been raining, and he takes me out, and they get stuck in the mud down in this valley, and his wife and I had to walk out of there, and she was so mad at him. Look at what you did. This guy has to walk in his nice pretty suit and in all this mud. And I was just laughing. I was like, yeah, about my speed here. But later on, we sat down and ended up being good friends and good customers of mine. So it was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, I remember meeting them, and that was an enjoyable trip, and they were pretty entertaining. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yep.
I remember. Well, I won't go into that story.
He got up on
I
stage.
remember a couple of evenings on that trip that we might have done. We might have overdone it just a little bit as
Just a tiny
possible,
bit.
and
Oh yeah.
that was an enjoyable trip. And you're pretty safe most time on those kind of trips anyway. But
Right.
my fear on a cruise is you had like a room with a balcony or something, and there is no way I was getting a room with a balcony. I knew I was going to fall off the ship, and there ain't no way. And I'd get eaten by a shark, and I was obsessed with sharks, and and getting eaten by one, and that's when what you did you go scuba diving with me? I don't remember, but I went scuba
The
diving when we were in Grand Cayman, and I was very I was bored, and I'm an idiot. I had my wallet in my pocket the whole time. That was kind of foolish. And I was the whole time. I couldn't enjoy it. I was so afraid of getting eaten by a shark. And there I was trying to enjoy a trip, but oh no, I'm getting eaten by a shark, and it didn't end up being all that entertaining. But
yeah.
at any rate, big
The,
times, big memories. And from David living large, being a big investment portfolio manager. I remember those days, and I remember all of that. Your kids were very young at the time,
oh
and
yeah.
I was living, I believe, in Washington D.C. I think, or I might have moved to Texas by then. It could have been barely after I got out of the military, but I don't remember if I was still in or out.
I
And
think you were in Texas.
oh yeah, and well, I was still in the military then, but I was in the reserves at that time, and not no longer on active duty. And so yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was when I was in Texas as well. And I might have been in law school at that time. I don't remember. And but it was an entertaining week, and that was a lot of fun. And so, at any rate, since that time, so your history back then, when you were in Columbus, Ohio, you were portfolio manager, but you had something to do with soccer in
Oh yeah.
Columbus, did you not?
Yep. Even back then, I was doing soccer. I started the I when my oldest boy, who's now in his early 40s, was 4 or 5 years old. We moved from Utah to Ohio, and we had just finished baseball in Utah. And I've always loved coaching and teaching and being around kids. And we go to Ohio, and my wife Sherry signed him up for baseball and put down that I would coach because she knew I'd want to. And the lady called, and she called me, the lady who ran the league, and she said, um, baseball's over for Ohio right now. It won't start up again until next spring, but we're going to put him into soccer. And your wife said you would coach. And I said, I know nothing about soccer except that I played when I was in the Marine Corps over in Spain, and we got our butts handed to us time and time again because we didn't know what we were doing.
Well,
And
everybody in Spain plays soccer.
oh yeah, but nobody in America at that time played soccer.
No, we couldn't
Not
even
at all.
spell soccer at that time.
Yeah. And so she said, but don't worry, we'll teach you. And from the moment I stepped on the soccer pitch until today, even today, I love soccer. I love it. It's the best sport in the world. I just enjoy it. Every time I try to get out of it, and quit coaching, and I own a semi-pro soccer team, and I'm just not going to stop. I just love it too much. But back then, I didn't know anything about it. Since then, I mean, I've learned a lot. I've been to a lot of different countries and gone to soccer matches, and can't wait until 2026, when the World Cup is back here, and see if we can get some games in, especially here in Florida.
Where's the World Cup? I mean, what cities is that?
Oh, it's
A
in
bunch of
it's in
different
the
cities?
United States. It's in the
Mm.
United States and Canada and Mexico. So they're
Oh, it
they're
could be
most
anywhere, but so these teams could play anywhere.
well, they have I believe the first round. Um, I believe there's a couple of games in Orlando, and if there is, you and I are going to go. We're going to go up
Ah,
there, and because it's only 40 minutes away from me. A
well,
couple
I
of
lived
hours.
in Qatar when Qatar was building all of
Oh,
the infrastructure and stadiums for FIFA 2022.
right.
Or was it 2020? I don't remember, but I want to say
No, 22.
22. And I wanted to go back so bad and see all of that. And I missed the boat. I was doing other things, and I just couldn't get it together. And not that I like soccer. I don't even understand the rules. But when I lived over in Qatar, I lived with a gentleman. I lived in a villa with 7 other men in this huge villa, and one guy's wife lived there too, but the rest of us were pretty much single. And there was a guy there named. Oh, I take that back. There was an American girl living there too. But there, we were the only two Americans in that house, and there was several European guys. Yitza was from Amsterdam. His wife was from England, and there was a wide variety. And there was a guy named Alvaro that played. Oh my God, he was wild man about soccer and football, and he would talk about football, and he'd say, "Said you want to go watch a football game with me?" I said, "Oh yeah, who? Dallas Cowboys? Denver Broncos? Who's playing? I need to know." "Oh no, 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 uh, Birmingham and whatever his team was. Barcelona was his team, and I would always mess with him, and he would just get so grumpy about it. "Oh, that's not football. You don't know what football is." And Europeans take their football very serious, as does the rest of the world, really.
Right.
And America is starting to get there. But I learned a lot. I also started watching rugby at that time because
Oh, yeah.
I had a South African friend living in there, white guy, South African, funny. Oh, and he wanted to introduce me to rugby, and we would go. They'd have these big tents in the middle of the desert that you could go and sit, and it'd be all men, and they would come out there, and they'd have all these tents, and they also had them at all these 5-star hotels too, and you could go sit outside at night watching games from all over the world on these huge screens, and people would watch them and go out there and drink and revel and carry on watching rugby and soccer on these huge TVs. So, but that's the experience I have with soccer. I always wanted to go to a live game, but frankly, I think I prefer hockey just a little bit. But why don't you tell us um, about what your didn't weren't you involved with some professional team in
Yeah.
Columbia, in
Well, in
Columbus,
Columbus.
Ohio at some point?
Yeah, Columbus. When they first brought the MLS to fruition, I was in Columbus, Ohio, and Lamar Hunt, who has since passed on, one of the richest guys in the world, the Hunt family, was part of American football and owned part of the Kansas City Chiefs, owned part of the Chicago Bulls basketball. There were all kinds of things he had his fingers into. And the in Columbus, Ohio, the very first soccer stadium, which is the Columbus Crew Stadium, was proposed. And at the time, I had wealthy clients. I worked with people who had millions of dollars, and uh, my interest, of course, was in the financing of the stadium. And so I flew down to Texas, Dallas, Texas, and went into high rise there in Dallas, 40 stories high, 40 stories big. And you walk into the lobby, and there's a life size brass or bronze statue of Lamar Hunt's father in the lobby with a list of all his accomplishments. And I'm looking at this going, wow, then this is a lot bigger than what I thought it was going to be. So I get in the elevator, and of course, the Hunt family owns the building, and they have the top floor. And so I go up to the top floor, and the elevator doors open, and I took a step out, and it's the first time, one of the very, very rare occasions, when I actually smelled money and the power that real money could bring. And it took me a second to realize that, I was stepping into a different realm than the guys that I normally worked with. So I go in, the general manager of the Columbus Crew, who was a friend of mine, he was the one that had brought me in and got me in to see Lamar Hunt. And so he comes out and he says to me, come on into the office. I have to stop real quick, so maybe you can talk. I have to plug my computer in because it's saying your battery is running low.
So I'll do that before you go off of the screen, and we'll continue with that story. And I will just tell everybody that you are listening to Samuel Trapp on International Flavor, and I'm actually doing an interview with my brother David Trapp, who is Coach Trapp, and we hope to discuss his efforts in soccer for a long period of time, and allow a little bit of time for storytelling and what he has done. And he's done some pretty amazing things, and is a welcome addition to today. And, he was telling us a story about meeting Lamar Hunt. Lamar, I recall that name. Oh, I hope are you there?
Yeah.
David, you blocked your screen for just a second. I don't know what happened.
Can you see me now?
Yeah, I can see and I can hear you. Things are
good.
So you're in Lamar Hunt's his kingdom on top of this office building in downtown Dallas.
Right.
So carry on.
Okay. So after I stepped out of the elevator, after I smelled the money that their family represented, Jamie, who was the general manager of the Columbus Crew, comes out, takes me into the office, introduces me to Lamar Hunt and to one of his sons, Clark Hunt. And they, very, very gracious, sits me down. I give him a presentation and tell him Merrill Lynch is ready to provide you with the funding. And so got done with the presentation, was feeling pretty good about it. And the Lamar says to me and Jamie, I want you guys to go down to Clark's office and he'll talk to you for a bit. But it was nice to meet you and, good presentation. So we go down to Clark's office and he says, well, he said, that was a good presentation, but we really think that we're just going to build this and use our petty cash fund. Now, the stadium that they had proposed to build, you know, was in the multi-millions to build a soccer stadium, very first one ever in the United States specifically for soccer. And of course, I'm devastated. I'm like, oh man, because I was going to make a pretty penny out of that, the finder's fee for the millions of dollars. So as we get done with the meeting and we're walking down the hall and Jamie's telling me, okay, well, maybe next time. And I said, well, I have a question for you. I said, my petty cash fund, it has like $100 in it, and we use it to buy pizza for the our AAs, our assistants, and I said, how much is in their petty cash fund? And he started laughing. And he said, well, there's about 300 million. Now, this was almost 30 years ago. So you can imagine what their petty cash fund is now.
Yeah. Hey, David, just getting in the room was probably a huge accomplishment, just getting into that room, because that stuff just doesn't happen. And so congratulations to you for that. And I think that is awesome. But what after the stadium went up, you had something to do with the crew, didn't you?
Yeah, we did some, and I did end up getting some investments from, the general manager. I had a loge at the stadium that cost me and my friends and I got together and did it because it cost like 10 grand per year.
What did you call that?
A loge. So it's LOGE, and it was a private room in the stadium looking out onto the field, and it had like 16 seats.
Oh, and they could serve you there. You could have wait staff. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know there was a special word for that, to be truthful, but they have those in other types of stadiums, and I've been to a bunch of those sorts of parties where you
and to show you how long ago that was, they have now built a new stadium in Columbus, Ohio, and the old one's not being used for Columbus Crew anymore. So that's how far along.
Too small for the crowds, probably.
Yeah, I didn't live there after after the Hunt Group sold the franchise. I didn't live there anymore. I had already moved on. And so I don't know the particulars. I just know that it was an aging stadium. And I thought to myself, when I heard that, I thought, uh-oh, because that means I'm an aging whatever.
Well, we all age. It's just a question of how well we do it.
And how quickly.
So what's your over the years? How did you continue your soccer efforts?
Well, my boys, 3 of the 4 kept playing, and then when Sherry got sick, which was it took her quite a while until she finally passed on, but the illness was diagnosed 10 years before she died, and she died 13 years ago. And so my boys, my 2 youngest, were playing, and they came to me at that time, and I was still coaching, and they were 14 and 15. And they came to me and said, Dad, we're not going to play soccer anymore. And that kind of hurt, because I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm the coach, and why aren't you going to play anymore? And well, because we want to be with Mom. And, and we knew that it was just a matter of time. And so I understood that. But I'm telling you, my baby could have been really, really good. And he's still pretty good right now, but he has other priorities. But I kept coaching. because I had fallen in love with the sport. So everywhere I went, every city that I've moved to, um, I've constantly coached, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue being involved, although I'm not coaching nearly as much as I used to. But it's still a great sport. If I could get out and play it, I would. But with a new knee and a new hip, yeah, you got to be a little more careful.
Yeah. Well, so so currently you said you own what do
Yeah,
they call it?
semi-pro team.
A minor league team? That
Well,
would be what it's called?
there's there's levels to soccer, and
Mm,
in the United States, there's the MLS, the Major League Soccer, the USL, which is United Soccer League, and then there's the UPSL, which is um, considered semi-pro, and I own a franchise in that here in Cocoa Beach, and in fact, we've been recruiting. Our season ended approximately 3 weeks ago, and we've been recruiting. And so I'm the executive director of the club of the team, and my job is to find the recruits. I go to Brazil 3 or 4 times a year. I have agents in China and Morocco, and recently picked up one this past week in Portugal, one in Serbia and Spain that sends me players to come play for this team. And, so we did pretty good. This last season wasn't as great as the season before. The season before, we actually made it to the state semifinals here in Florida. But last season, the one that just ended, some of our boys went back to college, so we couldn't. We didn't have as many good players or many players as we needed, and so we didn't end up even making the playoffs. But that'll change in the spring because our college boys come back, and we've already signed 4 more players. Um, let's see, one's from Morocco, one's from Brazil, one from Serbia, and one from Mexico. So getting some, we're going to have another good team this spring.
well, that's good. I wanted to mention while we're still here, you were on for a brief period a couple of weeks ago, and there was a gentleman who has called in on another show on the station and said that he'd like to contact you. I understand that you do take uh, sponsors for your
Right.
team for things like equipment and whatnot, and you're always looking for people with similar interests. Um, and if you could give out your email, um,
Oh, yeah.
address. I may be able to put it on the bottom of it scrolling, but this is going to be on the radio too. We're recording this for the radio to show up on Wednesday. So if you would tell what email you prefer and spell it out, that would be great.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah. Well,
It, it,
it's spoken, so I suppose I'm ready. Go ahead.
it's a fairly simple one. Coach D Trapp with 2 P's. So COACH, D is in David, Trapp, TRAP is in Paul, P is in Paul, at gmail.com. And
Mhm.
I'm on there constantly. And so I would see their emails right away.
Well, it's not likely that we will get a lot of international viewers here, but if people are interested in getting connected internationally, they can use that same email, I presume. I
Right.
remember, and I may have told you this story, may not. I was in Georgia and Russia in August, and we're been being driven by the same guy, for quite a few times, and met on a bus. We were in a bus going on a tour in a bus, and I was sat next to a guy. It was a 15 passenger van, and I ended up sitting next to a guy who coached the soccer team for a city. Uh, which city did he say? I think it was Vladikavkaz, but I'm not positive. I guess it doesn't really matter. And we were going to exchange information, and then we got separated. I never did get it because I was talking about, and it was a youth sort of soccer, young adult sort of soccer. They were finished with seems to be similar to what you're talking about as the I called it the minor league, but you called it the level. You know, the a different level. There was a discussion, and I'm wondering if maybe you can tell me how this works because I was in Qatar for about a year and a half, and I tried to learn some about this process. And I'll tell you what I learned, and you tell me whether that's accurate. You can fill in the blanks or start all over. But while talking to mostly this Spaniard who was so funny, and his accent was just so terrible, and he made awesome paella, and that just he loved to cook, and he made that, and he loved his sports. He loved his alcohol, that's for sure, and he loved soccer, and he loved to tell you every little thing about it. And he was he was all up in arms a couple of times about they were thinking of changing the rules in FIFA because of the Americans, and the Americans didn't, according to him, and I may not understand it, I might not recall it properly, but he said there's an entire system of soccer, football, and how it works around the world. And that system, the Americans, of course, went in and tried to damage this entire system and beat it all up and change it all around. And we don't understand what's going on. And why do you Americans always have to get involved and mess things up that have been perfectly fine for decades, and you come in and try to ruin it? And what he was talking about was the system of coaching. And so when they start these kids, you can be. And I realized that we in America do this too. You know, the professional football players began playing football when they were 5. And you know, I had my oldest boy when we lived in Texas. He was 7 or 8 and insisted that he wanted to play football. And when we got there, they said, "Oh, he's 2, 3 years behind these boys. He's never going to be able to play." And I was like, "What are you talking about? He's 8." You know, these people were lunatics about their American football in Texas. I mean, 3 a day practices in August in Texas for 8-year-olds. And I remember I'm not a violent person, you know, for the most part. I might yell at you or something, but I remember a coach grabbing my son by the face mask and shaking him. And I went over there and I came unglued. I said, "I don't know what." He goes, "What do you?" I said, "Well, what do you think? You're coaching a bunch of professionals here?" And this guy must have weighed 300 pounds. You know, I was like, "Look, these kids are 8. I'm not sure what you're intending to do here, but I get the feeling that soccer in every other country, and maybe even the U.S. too, is just as serious. And maybe I'm not serious enough to have forced my children to play. Maybe they would all be professionals in something if you start them at age 5 and make them practice in 3 a days." Well, what the scoop was in this soccer or European football, and everywhere else in the world too, is that a coach that finds a prospect and keeps that prospect together and stays with him through his development and coaches him from the age of 5 until he is picked up and accepted into a program somewhere and starts earning a salary, that coach gets a portion of his, kind of like a finder's fee, kind of
Right.
like a percentage that an agent would get or something. And
Right.
in the U.S., they were saying, and it starts at any age. And I would argue with them. I was like, well, how in the world are you going to take a coach who started a kid playing at age 5 and tell him he gets a chunk of his money by the time he turns, 16, 18, 20, 21, and starts playing like a madman in some of these leagues? He goes, well, how are you going to tell them that it's not their money? How are you going to tell them that they didn't train that? He goes, how do people prepare? I don't understand why you don't understand this, you lunatic of an American. This is the system, and the Americans were coming in and trying to say, absolutely not, because they didn't want a coach like you, let's say, coming in and saying, "Oh, that's my player who's playing in FIFA league, doing whatever. You owe me some money," and obviously they wouldn't, but it was included in their contracts that these people got kind of a
Yeah, they do.
honorarium, a percentage, however that works. What do you know about that, and can you tell me more about how that works? That
Well,
might be very interesting.
there's a couple of things that are incorrect in your summation, and that
Mm.
is it's not the coach that gets the money. He does receive a part of, if he's still around, if he's still with the club, but the club gets the money. And it doesn't start at any age. It starts when they're 12 and only goes through until they're 23. So if I have, and believe me, my club, we're all for this, because if we have a player right now, we have a player that is 17 years old and he's good enough to play semi pro. If he turns pro anytime in the future, from the time he's 17 until the time that he moves on or goes to a different club or whatever, that club that trained him, that developed him, gets a small percentage of whatever that player makes when he's playing professionally.
Even in the U.S.
Even in the, well, and here's where the guy that you were talking to is correct. In America, we're like, nope, that's not happening. And we've actually, there's been a lot of court action on this, that uh, there are people like myself that believe that, hey, we're training these kids. Why, if they're going pro, we helped in their development. Why shouldn't we get a portion of what they make? Right? I mean, we were the ones that
I'm
trained.
not against it. It's just it's an
Yeah.
interesting concept
And
that
so
I had never
the
heard of until he brought this up. And
oh yeah, and it's slowly taking root in the United States, and because we're all, everybody who is a soccer aficionado, we believe, well, most of us believe that that's the system. We shouldn't be charging these kids to play, which is what America does. America charges the kids. When the kids come to play for my academy, I have to charge them, because there's no system in America that will pay for these players. Um, but we are trying to get that changed. The clubs over in Europe, they're the ones that are responsible for taking care of the players and developing them, and they don't charge those players. When I'm in Brazil and all the Brazilian boys come up to me during showcases, they're playing for a club, and they're, for the most part, not paying to play. The club is taking care of them. They have complexes where these boys live, and they train every day, and their goal is to turn professional or play for their national team. Well, somebody's got to pay for that, and it's the clubs that pay for it, not the parents. So, you know, the clubs are doing it to make a profit, and they can't make a profit if they don't get part of the salaries that the higher clubs will pay. And so, hey,
So, if you had an equivalent, and this is just, primitive Sam here talking, but if you had an equivalent, it's, you know, taking your, it's like repairing a car. And I mean, seriously, think about this. If you're bringing something in and making it better, and you're not really getting a fee, you'd be getting it in the future. I mean, I'm not sure you're forming all the parts together, but you're making a final product going out, and hopefully that final product gets picked up by somebody. I don't know my thoughts on that. I really don't, on whether I think it sounds fair, when you do it that way. Like they had those discussions over the last, oh geez, it's been going on for a while, but that court case not too long ago that now allows the NCAA schools can pay players in college,
oh
and
yeah,
they're getting,
the NIL.
yeah, and that's I don't know how I think about that, but soccer always seemed a bit on the different side, especially because I didn't know what the heck it was, and I was trying to find out while I lived in Qatar, especially while they were building all the FIFA things, and everybody was European, and everybody was talking European football, and who am I but the ugly American who doesn't have any clue what is going on in the first place, and then you're living in a foreign country where their sports are not our sports, and
Right.
maybe not very few of them. There's a good number to do. There's some baseball and plenty of basketball,
Right.
lots of basketball,
Oh yeah.
but mostly it's rugby and football, European football.
Right.
And so
Well,
I've always been interested, and I know you've been involved.
here's some numbers for you. When I wrote my dissertation for my doctorate, my thesis was, why do kids in America quit playing sports as they hit their teenage years? And it's not just soccer, although my focus was on soccer. In the 1970s, in the United States, there was over 3 million registered youth baseball players. There was 100,000 youth soccer players in the 70s. Okay. The year that I finished my study, that was 10, 15 years ago, there were 4 million registered youth soccer players in America, and only 2 million registered baseball players, youth baseball players in America. That's how much soccer grew from the 70s to the 2010 era, and how much baseball actually went down. And one of the reasons why I fell in love with soccer was the fact that I'm short. I'm, not that powerful, but man, I love to run. Even now, I don't run nearly as much, but the enjoyment of getting out on the soccer field to me was 10 times more than standing stagnant on a baseball diamond. And to me, I always thought, man, I wish I had played this growing up, because what a fantastic sport for anybody. And look at Messi. Messi's one of the greatest players ever. And he's a little dude. He's like my size. And yet he's one of the greatest players ever.
How old is that guy?
30, I want to say 34. He might be a little bit older. But
And he makes some pretty serious money, doesn't he?
yeah, And if you can imagine, a small portion of that goes to the club that actually helped him develop. So,
But you had said something, and I meant to follow up, and I forgot. You had said this goes on from the time the child is 12 until they're 23.
right.
But
That's the
Messi's over.
development years.
What?
Okay. So whatever club he's with, whatever club Lionel Messi was with, from the time he was 12 till the time he was 23, receives a portion of his pay.
Oh, I see. So if he was with more than one club, they would both receive something, or
Yes.
okay, but it only
Yep.
counts for the period of time from the time they were 12 until they
Right.
were 23,
Right.
regardless where they end up.
Right.
And that's a pretty regular sort of deal that
Oh,
will,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a
If you sign
standard
with the
part
club,
of a contract or something like that, that
Yeah.
they would get a contract to play. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I bring a fair number of players over from Brazil, and Bernardo was here, for like 6 months just this past year, and he and I talked a lot, and he would tell me what clubs he had played for, and his goal was to go pro. He's not going to. He wasn't that skilled as a soccer player, but his desire was to do it. And he explained to me that the club that signed him when he was 12 would get, money if he turned pro, if he went to the pros. And I understood that system a long time ago, but it's interesting to get one of the kids' perspectives. And he's like, look, they took care of me. We trained every day. Well, here in America, soccer still isn't, the main sport at all. Yet there are millions of kids playing it. The problem that we have is twofold. One is we charge our players to play. And so we're economically disadvantaging kids that can't afford to play. And there's a lot of them that can't afford to pay what some of these clubs are paying or charging their players. The second one is that.
But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but even if they're paying to play, the school or the club that helped teach them would still get a portion of their money.
Well, see, that's where all these foreign people are like, well, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. You can't
Well,
charge.
I say that you can't have it both ways.
No, and I agree, and that's why I think it would be more fair if the clubs just said, we're not going to charge our players. We're going to sign them to contracts. They're going to develop with us. We're going to take care of them, but we get a portion of their salary when they go pro.
Yeah, but if they're 12, they can't sign a contract.
Yeah, but their parents can.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and then, but then guys like you would have to pay for your club instead of having them pay you. So it's kind of a catch-22, isn't that correct?
Yeah. So
well, I'm sorry I interrupted you, and I hope I didn't cause you to lose your train of thought. But go ahead.
No, I still have my train of thought because the second disadvantage that we have is that the distractions in America are tenfold greater than any other country for the most part. And that is, we have so many different sports at so many different levels, and it's a money-making machine. Youth sports in America is money-making. When they first started paying me to coach, I was like, wow, they're paying me to come out and do something that I would volunteer to do. But I understood why they were doing it. It's because the parents immediately have a different perception of you as a coach if you are getting paid. And the club, the very first club that offered to pay me, I'd only been coaching like 5 years. They said, we're going to pay you, but you have to go get licensed. We want to make sure that you're going to be a good coach. And I was okay with that. I mean, I've taken, every licensing course you can take in America for the most part. And my doctorate is in sports management. So, it incentivized me to go out and become a better coach. And, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people out there that are a lot like me. We started playing soccer when we were younger. I started in the Marine Corps, and, we grew to love it. And, but it's not just soccer. I mean, look at these kids playing basketball, baseball, football, hockey, all of them. They all charge, and so soccer's not the only one. And the kids
I
that,
always wish I always wish, when I was I was always really good at baseball. And I remember when me and Russ, a year older than me, we first signed up for baseball, and I should have been playing with the 6 or 7 year olds, and he should have been playing with the 7 or 8 year olds, and they immediately moved us up to play with the 12 to 14 year olds because
yep,
we were lunatics in our family. We had our own baseball team already, and all
yep,
we did was play baseball, and so at a very young age we were all pretty darn good at baseball because that's what we did. You'd
oh
play.
yeah,
We had a big yard, and you'd play, and that's what we did. And it was a very good for development. Kind of makes me wish I'd have stayed with it, But
yeah.
it's it. But we moved a lot, and we did some things. But to hear about the distractions, I see that, and it also frustrates me that somewhat, and I'd like to get your take on this because like I told you, when my son was playing football in Texas, and they're lunatics about it down there. Texas and Alabama, they are psycho about
Oh
their
yeah,
football, and they begin, you know, beating the snot out of kids with all of this, you know, produce,
yep,
produce, and play, and it takes the fun out of it at that age. In the way I look at it, and but then again, if you're committed, you're starting to teach your kid how that goes. Um, I suppose there are pluses and minuses to both sides, and but obviously, my son, we paid a lot of money for him to play on this football team.
oh yeah,
For even way back then, we paid a lot of money for him to play, and I thought they were lunatics, and he lasted about. It was right before. It was either right before or right after his first game, and that coach, I yanked him out, and
yeah.
this coach was an evil tyrant anyway, and I never could justify treating. I want to say he was 7 or 8, maybe 9, but he was under 10, and treating kids that way
Yep.
because of a stupid sport. It's like those dads who come to the baseball game and chew out the umpire, and they're just I just don't like that, and never really have. And I don't know what the right answer is as far as paying clubs, paying players pay, parents pay. Which one's the best? What are your thoughts as far as the reason for all those things in America
I
and the
think that
result?
it would take a cataclysmic event to get them to change now. There's way too much money involved. That I mean, parents don't even blink at paying, 1,500 to 2,000 a season for youth soccer, and
In America.
in America, and it's
Hmm.
like they're paying. I mean, they're clubs like mine. The if we were running it for profit and it was as big as, what I think it could be, we'd be paying a director like myself 100 grand a year easily just to run the organization, and we'd be charging kids $1,200 to $1,500 a season just to come play a game. And how many games is that during the season? 10 games. And they're paying, and the travel and the hotels and the tournaments. And let me tell you, when my kids were that age, and we had 4 sons, and there were times when Sherry would be in one state with 2 of the boys, and I'd be in another state with the other 2, and we'd come back over the weekend and compare how we did. It was, and we didn't mind. We were with our family, we were with our kids, and most of the time we were able to be together, all 4 of the boys, all. And during the later years, the 2 oldest ones were still competing, and the 2 youngest ones were refereeing and making money, when they were refereeing over a weekend at a tournament. And of course, I was getting paid to coach. So, we'd all go to the tournament. We'd actually make money, but not all the parents. How many coaches and referees can you get? Most of the parents didn't want to do any of that. They were willing to pay. And so my thoughts on it are, we're slowly taking ourselves out of that system. Thank you. Because I think we should open it up for everybody to be able to play. Now, you were saying earlier that you had to pay a lot for your 7 or 8-year-old to play football. And, would it be worth it? Well, what if those that were serious, those that really, really loved the sport, and I can pick them out. There are kids out there that's all they want to do is play that one sport, and you should take that kid and let him play at the highest level you can play him. Take him, even if he's 6, 7, or 8, let him play at the U12, U13 age group, and let him get beat up and let him play hard. And if he truly loves the sport, he'll excel, and he'll be one of the ones that can go pro. But take the rest of the 99% and let them play the game, but don't charge them as much if you charge them at all. And, just let them play, and don't push them so hard, and don't think that it's your son or your daughter that's going to be, this world-class athlete, because only 1% of them are. The rest of them aren't. There's just no way. It can't be. And, but take those kids that are really, really serious and put them into a good club. Don't make them pay, and, let them go train 6, 7 days a week, 3 or 4 times a day. Give them an education with the club providing it, and, develop them. And then the money that they earn, part of that will come back to you. The rest of the kids, let them come play, teach them a sport, teach them, that they can play this sport, but it doesn't have to be all encompassing. That would be a good system.
Well, in Texas specifically, because I remember, shopping around for this, this was, my son wanted to play football, and people had warned me that, you go in there, you better be serious. And I didn't want to put up that kind of money, because it was, that was in the 90s. And I was like, do I really want to spend? And it was some ungodly amount of money back at the time when you got 4 kids. And
Right.
I was going, just the uniform was, cost a couple $100 back then. And helmet cost whatever to protect your kid. Then you got some lunatic coach, beating them up on the field, and he was nuts. But allegedly one of the good ones. And that, I believe, that was only for football, and you had to pay to play, and they didn't have different types of leagues. But what they had in Texas, at least for baseball and every other sport, and maybe it's changed and they do something similar for soccer, they called it a recreational league versus a real paid. They would call it things like elite, but the elites, a lot of them aren't any good either. They just, their parents are willing to pay for the word elite, in front of their kid's name, when they're 7 years old. If I say he's elite, he's going to be elite. And I hate to be cynical about that, but at the same time, I could see that, maybe a recreational versus or whatever. And I coached baseball. That same son was pretty darn killer at baseball, and we played on what they called a select. How about that?
Right.
A select baseball, meaning you actually tried out, and
Yeah.
if the and there were usually three coaches on a team, and two of them, at least on the case of me, I was a ringer. I was just somebody who I understand baseball. I loved baseball back then, and I mean, not that I don't now, but I was pretty good at coach. I'm pretty good with kids. It's pretty funny because I prefer, and I know you're exactly the same way. I
Right.
prefer the company of children because they're just innocent and they don't judge anything, and they are openly happy. They are openly uh,
Yep.
just open,
Yeah.
and they want to please for the most part, that it's and if they're coming out to, for some reason I get along better with kids
Oh, I know
than
that
I do
feeling.
adults, and I know that sometimes that happens with you, and I don't know why, but I've always been able to relate. I had an old girlfriend tell me one time that said, you know, you remember the movie where they said he doesn't like kids. He doesn't. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That was in Tin Cup. Did you ever watch the movie Tin
Oh,
Cup?
yeah.
When
Yeah.
Don Johnson is like the bad guy in there, and
Right.
Kevin Costner says to the girlfriend, he goes, "You just watch out because he he hates dogs, he hates kids, and he can't stand old people." And then some autograph seeker
Yeah.
comes, a little kid comes up to sign an autograph, and she catches Don Johnson going, uh, uh, hey, Grandpa, what are you doing bringing that kid up here? Do I interrupt you at your office? Get that kid out of here, and that's an ugly dog. And she got him saying all those things at once. Anyway, but for me, it's been the opposite. Kids generally like me. I don't know
Right.
why, but generally I get along, and I know it's the same with you,
Oh, yeah.
and I can relate to them for some reason, and I don't know why. So I assume that's part of the reason you enjoy coaching.
Oh, yeah. That might be because we have so many brothers and sisters. We had to learn how to get along, because when you have a house full of that many kids, if you don't get along, well, it was chaos anyway. But you know, when we weren't getting along, oh baby,
Oh boy, we could tell some stories.
oh man,
Maybe I throw you under the bus. Maybe I don't. But that brother passed away. But I remember I saw this, and I couldn't have been, but I don't know, 7 or 8. And what are you, 5, 6 years older than me? And he was 6 or 7 older than me,
yeah. You
something
turn,
like
yeah.
that. And he's
I'm
a
like
year older
60.
than you, right? He's a year older than you.
Yeah,
Well, I hope if it offends you, I'm sorry, but it was pretty funny. We were kids. I
yeah,
remember Mike was so much different than the rest of us. He was a
yeah,
genius. The guy was just a true genius.
yeah,
He skipped a couple of grades. He finished college, way before any but the rest of us even attempted to get in, and and he was just an extremely intelligent a genius. And
yep,
his kids are all very impressive. That is one of the smartest people you ever met. But I always said about him that he would, he's one of those guys that are so smart that they run around and bump into walls,
yeah,
because he just, his thoughts are on a different level,
yeah.
and,
I agree.
but I remember the two of you, and he was much bigger than you. You were always very small, and he
Oh
was
yeah,
much bigger than you. And I remember you taunting him chasing you around, him pushing you up against a wall and taking a swing at you, and you ducking, and him hitting the post of the wall and breaking his hand. Is that true?
yeah.
Or do I remember something that didn't
Oh
really
yeah,
happen?
yeah. I wasn't gonna let him hit me.
I remember that story. And I remember his mom yelling about. Mom was always yelling about something
Oh
anyway. And
yeah,
I remember him yelling about you and that you broke his hand, and you
yeah,
yelling
of
back,
course.
how'd you break your own darn hand? I didn't
Yeah,
break. You're the dummy that hit the wall. Stuff like that. Anyway, we had some entertainment, that's for sure. We didn't even have
yeah,
to pay to go anywhere to get entertainment. There was always something at our house, and we
yeah.
had some wild times. Do you remember the time he same brother? Do you remember the time Mom made him come out and play football with us in the yard, and
Gee,
he broke
he
his
was
hand there?
awful. He
You,
was
you
the only one of us that was not athletic
the
at
only one that
all.
couldn't swing a baseball bat,
Nope.
couldn't do any of that, and he was older than. I mean, he was
Yeah,
a decent amount older than me, but I remember you and we came in
like
groups. There was the three of you,
Dave and
and
Clay.
then the
Yeah,
next group were the next of
yeah,
us, and then there was another group that went on
right.
further down the line, and we would pick one kid from every group to play a sport, and that was kind of entertaining. And so
Yeah.
it would always be you and Russ and Mark and me and Clayton and Matt or something like
We,
that. And
oh man, we would pick
there
on
were
Matt
some
so
knockdown
much.
dragouts on football and a bunch of crazies and people
Oh yeah,
beating each other up. And we had a pretty good time, but we didn't have to leave anywhere to go do it. We had some pretty
yeah,
wild times, and there was about 4 or 5 years between uh, you and Clayton and me and Russ, and then
right.
another 4 or 5 years between me and Russ and
Matt and
Mark
Mark.
and Matt. So we'd have
Yeah,
one one son from each age group of the six that played sports,
right.
and the seventh brother really wasn't interested. He had
No,
much higher thoughts than the rest
yeah.
of us.
Oh yeah.
And,
I think he
well, we're nearing the
probably.
end. Oh, go ahead.
I think he probably wanted to, at some level, but he knew. He knew how bad he was.
Yeah, but he was also so involved in other things, and
Yeah.
that guy could play the flute like
Oh yeah.
nobody else.
Yeah.
And he was a hell of a flute player.
Yeah.
And I
Well, and that's what
remember
got me. That's what got me listening to Jethro Tull.
me too. I listen to
Is my
Jethro Tull
brother?
to this day. I
Oh
remember
yeah.
him in the house playing with perfection
Yeah.
Jethro Tull, all the
Yeah.
flute solos, and him doing it with
Yeah.
perfection.
Oh
And
yeah.
he was a master with that
Yeah.
flute, and I remember that just being in awe,
Yeah.
and that he could do something like that. Because I got news for you, I sure as hell can't, and I never
Yeah.
could, and I couldn't. Reading notes, they don't say anything. What are you talking about? I can't. I, I have no clue. That guy was just on a different sphere from the
Yeah.
rest of us, and he was doing programming of computers before computers were in existence. And
Oh yeah.
I had a discussion with him about programming Fortran, COBOL, all these old Microsoft DOS
Right.
languages from ages ago, and he was an expert. I'm sorry to twist to the show where I'm interviewing you and turning it into
Talking
something
about
about
Mike.
about our deceased brother, but
Yeah.
he was quite a man,
Yeah.
and
It was interesting.
he is missed, definitely from us, and that is for sure. And so, at any rate, we're nearing the end of the show.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about how people meet you, how they get in touch with you. Before you do that, I'm going to tell people again that this is International Flavor. We're on Dam Radio. Obviously, we didn't take any calls today because this show was pre-recorded. I will probably have David back from time to time and speak to him. I've got other brothers, one that wrote a book on a guy named Kiffin Rockwell, a World War II fighter pilot. It's a heck of a book, and that's a heck of a brother who wrote this book, and he is an attorney in Chicago, and this book is definitely a historical. He's being quoted. He was interviewed by some pretty big podcast slash TV, and I hope to get him back in. I've kind of quizzed him on it. I have a brother, the one that that invited me to Qatar to live there back in 2014, 15 when I lived over there, and he connected me with people to help me find employment over there, which was kind of cool. And he did some incredibly awesome things over there, building the Qatar airport. Helping, he was a high up muckety muck in the quality department, building Qatar Railways, which is the underground subway system and rail system, and he's consulting now with the California rail system. He's very well versed in those things. We have a family that people who have done some tremendous things and lucky. I mean, who'd have thunk it? You know that we'd have done some things. And David, you're in that too, from starting in the Marines and doing these soccer programs and soccer schools, and you seem to excel at everything that you've done, and most of us have raised families while doing it, you know,
Yeah.
and we have a pretty good family. We're not all that close, but at the same time, we're not all that far apart. In even brothers
That's
and
true.
sisters I haven't talked to in months, I can pick
Yeah.
up the phone and start off right where we left them, you know, or
Oh yeah.
years even, and it just it's like you've never been apart, and nobody judges you or hates you for it. They just
Yeah.
understand that, you know, we're all nuts. I mean, how do you keep track of what did you say? 93
Yeah.
great
Great
grandchildren and
grandchildren. Yeah.
73 grandchildren. I couldn't tell you, and don't smack me next time you see me, but I couldn't. Yours, I might be able to pull off the names of all of your sons and
Yeah.
daughters, but I'm not so sure. I guarantee you, I couldn't do that for every great. Mom can sit down and just boom, boom, boom. She puts
Yeah.
them all off, but that's how it goes. Well, you tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Sure. The we gave them the email address. I'll uh, I'll repeat
Repeat
it.
it. Yeah.
I Coach D Trapp at gmail.com. And then the should I give them my phone number?
If you wish to, I don't know. That's up to you. Maybe you should. I prefer myself, but it's up to you. But I prefer myself to let people contact me by email with those sorts
Yeah,
of things.
I think
Everybody
I'll
can do
stick with
that,
that
and
because I check my emails. I'm on email constantly. Because especially right now we're in the middle of recruiting, for our next upcoming season, and shoot, I'm getting 15, 20 emails a day from kids all over and around the world. So
mhm.
I have to keep on top of that. So yeah, I think I'll keep my phone number to myself for right now. But if
Okay.
anybody wants to contact me through email, I'll definitely answer right away.
Mhm. Well, I next time I'm in Russia, I might actually go to one of those soccer clubs over there
Oh,
and see
cool.
if I can start hooking up. That would be something very interesting, and I like that kind of thing anyway. I last time I was there, I'll give you a small story, and then we'll shut her down. Last time I was there, I was in Kazan at the BRICS conference here a little bit ago, and I wanted to go to the Kazan, the Tatarstan hockey team. Now, their hockey players, a lot of them get recruited to play over here, and they are like soccer. They're madmen about their sports over there too. These kids train and they train and they train, and so hockey is a very big sport over there, and I love a good hockey game. You know, I like to go to the stands. I don't watch a lot of it on TV. Same with football. I don't really watch a lot of sports on TV,
No,
but
no,
except important like playoffs and something. Sometimes I'll do something like that, or if I'm sitting at a bar, I want to see a hockey game on in a bar. You know, I want to. That's, but I prefer to go. I flew to Dallas once from Missouri to go see the Dallas Stars because the hockey team was mine. But boy, I would love to go to hockey, and I met some people who wanted to play hockey in the United States, and I spent my time trying to figure out how to get them to play soccer so I could hook them up with you. It's the same game, isn't it? You're just using a stick and a puck
Except
instead of a
ice.
ball.
No, it's
Rules
not
are,
the
I
same
mean,
game.
yeah, I'm
That's
sure
funny.
they beat the hell out of you in hockey. Well, David, I appreciate you coming and allowing me to interview
Yep.
you. We've met our hour and 30 minutes, and that is the end of the stream. We appreciate all of you that listen to us live, and appreciate those that are listening to us on damradio.com. Thank you very much, and everyone have a
Ciao.
good day.
Thanks, Sammy.
Ciao, ciao.
Yep.